Welcome to the EcoSend podcast. Be inspired, educated, and entertained by the world's most ambitious leaders, putting climate at the top of their agenda.
Hi there, welcome to another episode of the EcoSend podcast. I'm your host, James, and I'm thrilled to be bringing you another show today with the wonderful Will. And Will has been making brands work for over 15 years, working directly with clients or collaborating with design agencies and creatives. From concept to production, print to digital, England to Australia, his unique experiences and ideas bring something fresh to every project. We've known Will for quite a while, and we've worked with Will in the past, and I'm thrilled to have you here, Will, to talk about all things sustainability, all things design. It's great to see you. How are you doing today, Will?
I'm good, thanks, James. Yeah, just excited to be on the podcast and talking about design and environment and sustainability, and hopefully have a good conversation.
Awesome. Great to hear. So, Will, maybe in your own words, tell us a little bit more about what you're up to and basically how you got into what you're doing today.
Well, in a nutshell, I'm a sort of brand and communications graphic designer. Been doing it for, 15, 16 years. Big agencies in London and Sydney, and little ones, and for myself, and everything in between. And within some of those agencies doing sustainable stuff and other things as well. But the more and more I sort of developed my own practice, the more and more I found myself doing sustainable and environmentally sort of conscious projects, which is really nice and very rewarding work. It started really back in Falmouth University. Even though I'm originally from around Birmingham, Falmouth is right in the typical more, it's a bit more sort of removed and remote. It's a bit like an outpost from the rest of the country and the rest of your sort of normal university experience. And it's it's very coastal and outdoor. And I picked up surfing in the first year, and that got me all much more immersed in the ocean and the environment. And you start to notice stuff. You notice when there's sewage in the water, and you sort of, appreciate things a lot more, especially when seals and things pop up next to you, and you kind of just like realize how connected everything is. And so anyway, after sort of kind of catching the surfing bug, not a sewage related one, we sort of kept doing it and got really into it, did our 3 years at uni, and moved up to London, and we're really missing Cornwall. At the time, there was there's quite a well-known environmentalist called Hugo Tagholm, and he had taken over Surfers Against Sewage, which is a really well-known sort of grassroots sort of kind of activist charity who campaigned to get rid of sewage in the water around Porthtowan, where they started in the 90s, and with their goal, which they've done very well at across the whole of the UK coastline. And anyway, he took over and wanted to take the charity in a new direction, and started doing a range of talks all around the UK. One of them being in Carnaby Street in London. I don't think it's there anymore, but they used to have an old Howie's shop, which is a nice sort of environmentally friendly surf brand. So we were like, we love Surfers Against Sewage, we love Cornwall, let's go and see this talk and sort of reminisce. And we got chatting to Hugo after the talk, and just sort of said, we I can't remember if we had jobs or not by that point, but we were definitely doing placements in design agencies, and we were sort of sorted. So we just said, look, if you ever want any help, we would love to do some bits of design for you. It's just nice to sort of kind of be involved. And anyway, he was a lovely bloke, and he took us up on the offer, and we did like a campaign for changing it was a campaign to protect a wave anyway. The military had changed its firing range, which meant there was no access to this wave. And they wanted to do a campaign to sort of tell the military and local councils and government that that wave actually brought an awful lot of like money and visitors to the area. It wasn't just
Right.
I can't surf my wave, but actually there was like a special off that was like going to have to, was going to struggle. There was Airbnb, well, it
Yeah.
might have been before Airbnb, but there's definitely
Yeah.
there was a whole lot of community based around that wave, and so we did some quite funky t-shirt designs, and he quite liked them. And then I think a few months later came back for some stickers, and then then it was this, then it was that, and gradually over the years we've done loads for them, to the point where now they're still, I'm working for them. Literally, I was working for them before this call on a campaign. They
No way.
years, yeah. So that's how it all. That was like the biggest step for me into sustainability. Would be, offering up my skills to them for free back in the day.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's I mean, so many things that I find inspiring now. Just to start with, I've been to Cornwall since I was a kid, and I am yet to learn how to properly surf. So congratulations on knowing how to surf. That's fantastic. But I totally
good stuff. I mean, I can stand up on a board and go along.
That's a heck of a lot more than I could do. But it's for anyone listening to the podcast actually that's maybe not familiar with, well, maybe even the UK, like I guess Cornwall is just a wonderful spot, isn't it? And there's I guess a lot of different parts of Cornwall, but when you're on the coast in Cornwall, you feel a million miles away from, say, London, where you used to live and where I live, and it definitely, it's interesting hearing how that connected you with nature, and sort of gave you, that's a big driver of the passion you have for caring a little bit more about the planet than maybe many others do.
Yeah, well, I think when you're sort of because I suppose a lot of my work is actually more focused very much around like water and ocean conservation, which will have come from that link. But yeah, if you're generally, you sort of, there was I can't remember who the quote was, but it was like, people can only protect what they know, or something like that. So by once you sort of go down and you experience something, once you sort of had that experience, you can sort of understand what you're saving and protecting quite a lot more. Whereas I think, so I know one of the problems that people like Surfers Against Sewage are constantly sort of pushing with, and other charities I work with that are sort of like based around saving, the countryside and rivers and coasts and that sort of stuff, is trying to like make that link to people in inner cities who maybe don't get out to the countryside, don't go to the coast. Well, how does it affect them? Why should they bother? And that's quite a tricky call. I mean, because they've probably got other things they want to protect or save or be interested in, but the environment, like it or not, affects everyone wherever you are eventually.
Yeah, absolutely. So Will, I'm fascinated to sort of dig in more. I guess there's so many sort of avenues we could talk about here, from the kind of campaigns and projects you've been working on. I know you want to talk about suppliers as well, and sort of making sure you're choosing suppliers in a conscious way. Maybe it'd be good to hear more about that, if you like. And you were saying sort of maybe asking the right questions to help understand who you're spending money with, I guess.
Yeah, well, I think when you're doing design, or design for anyone really, but once it comes to a point where you're going to commission print, or you're going to get stuff created, it's our job at every sort of level to be asking those sort of awkward questions and making sure we're not just going for the cheapest stuff that wasn't sustainably managed or sourced, or isn't full of chemicals that are bad for the environment. And I mean, like, and like all things, the cheapest processes generally are the worst. That goes across quite a few things. So straight away, as soon as you sort of start to dig into like wanting to find sustainably and ethically managed kind of papers and stocks, or you're kind of producing things where you want to not use plastic, or not use bad ink, suddenly you're in a minority. There's less people asking those questions. There's even though there's a lot of options, they don't get used as much, so the price just starts to go up. And sometimes it's quite a tricky sell when you're trying to find that balance between like making something affordable for your clients, but also pushing your clients to spend a little bit more to do the right thing, if you will. But not everyone can
Yeah.
afford it. So you've got to, it's a tricky area. I mean, and also it's not always such a. I mean, like sometimes you just have to like push you that you assume things will be, um, good or ethical or environmental, and then you start asking questions or digging a little deeper, and you realise they're not. Like, I mean,
Right.
probably one of the biggest examples of this is a project we worked on. It was one of the first ones I did when I set up Willworks and sort of started working with surface against sewage. It's like more officially, like not as like a friend doing freebies and little kind of cheap bits on the side, but
Yeah.
as a company, and we help them brand, promote, create, almost do everything really for a big award scheme to celebrate all the people across the nation that are doing incredible things to remove plastic from our world and find
Right.
alternatives. And
Okay.
so it's called the Plastic Free Awards. It was sort of part
Yeah.
funded by Iceland Supermarkets with Richard Walker.
Okay.
And yeah, and it was big. Like they wanted it to be quite a slick event, like a proper award ceremony, done with
Yeah.
like a slightly activisty flair, but
Yeah.
not slick. Like they did it in like the Bristol Museum and Art Gallery, and there was a 3 or 4 course dinner and some speakers.
Oh wow.
It was
Yeah.
they got like I think they've had quite a few artists. We've done 3 now, and then they've had like Kurt Jackson, who's quite a famous artist, do the first award as a technician, and Tom Raffield did one. So it was quite high level. So it's quite a big thing for me.
Basically, the BAFTAs of plastics.
The BAFTAs of plastic-free.
Yeah.
Plastic-free activism. Yeah. But yeah, so it's it was a great thing to work on. But when I was like actually starting to create all this stuff, we constantly, it was like, right, what do we create a stage out of? And
wow, yeah.
all along it was like, so that was made of like recycled pallets, for instance, and the idea was we could break it apart and use it different years. So we were always looking for like ways to reuse stuff, recycle stuff, and then be able to use it again in the following years. And we even like the identity was sort of designed that we could pick it up and tweak it each year rather than changing it every year, which is a good use of much better use of charity money. But then when it actually came to speaking with suppliers, like some of them just didn't get it. Like,
oh really?
Yeah, like we wanted to get to some. We had like name tags for everyone there because obviously there's a lot of interesting people in the room, and it was good to know who they were and what companies they were from. So everyone sort of needed a name tag, and we sort of wanted it to be a takeaway thing as well. So we got those like etched into wood, which isn't really nice. But then the actual lanyard they went on. When the guy sort of sent me this sort of mock-up, it had this massive plastic clip on it, which was just at no point in the conversation mentioned.
Right.
I was like, I rang him up. I was like, I'm really sorry. Like, it all looks fine, but there's this big old plastic clip. Can we get rid of it? And he's like, no, sorry, we can't get rid of it. I was like, well, have you read what's written on the side of the lanyard? It says like just a massive plastic-free awards. He's like, oh yeah. I was like, well. And like and it was even like a bamboo material lanyard. There's a lanyard that was like marketed as like a sustainable lanyard.
Oh wow!
Materials. So rather than like acrylic, it was using like a kind of bamboo fiber. Yeah, they put a plastic clip on it. So I was like, "Do you see can you understand the problem here?" And I mean, I wasn't that condescending, but that was that was the sort of impression I gave. And anyway, he went off, and I think it was actually to do with a safety thing. It was like they need to be there for a quick release in case. I don't know, so like a child got strangled or something like that. But I was just like, well, there are places on the internet I can buy them without a plastic clip. I was like, I'm not trying to be like. I was just like, we just can't have we either can't have a lanyard, but or if we do, we definitely can't have one with plastic clips. So we have to find someone else. Anyway, they spoke with their team in the factories, and eventually they said, okay, we'll remove it. So, but it was just
you made it happen well.
Yeah, it was just funny that they had their sustainable product, but it still had a big chunk of plastic on it, and that happened again. There was like these little pin badges made, and they were like it was like on a nice recycled card, and it was like a little enamel metal pin badge, and then they wanted to wrap each individual one in a little plastic bag, and I was like. Again, we can't do that. I was like, it's like you can't put them all in a plastic bag. And then they were like, oh, okay, well, that's what we do. And I was just like, well, I mean, there must be something else we could do. And eventually they agreed to wrap them all in paper. So yeah, that was
Yeah.
and there were a number of things like that in that project that just suddenly, like at the last minute, it's like, hang on, that's completely like not in keeping with what we're trying to do.
Yeah. It's that's such I love these stories and anecdotes because it's fascinating, and it's like if the plastic free awards can't get it right, then what hope do the rest of us have for
Yeah,
for making the right steps? It's
yeah, exactly.
yeah.
And also, like, if you're like, I found this actually when we worked with I worked with Puma on their sustainable stuff when I was up in a big agency in
Oh
London.
wow.
And
Yeah.
when you do start to make any sort of claim, um, you've got to be really correct, because false advertising and greenwashing and all of that stuff, like they come down on you hard, very hard. Like Puma, when we worked with them, so we did some really nice stuff with Puma when I worked at a company called GBH that sadly aren't around anymore. But um,
Yeah.
they they had this whole section of Puma called like Puma's Clever Little World, and we branded a shoe made of like recycled denim offcuts, and we did
Oh
they did a whole
wow.
periodic table of all the sustainable things that they do across Puma. They even
Oh,
swapped out their shoe boxes for these bags that were like lighter, smaller, easy to transport.
mm,
All these great things, but then
oh cool.
but literally every time they did something, they got hounded by everyone trying to see if it was greenwashing and trip them up. And I think one time they did
Mm,
on this periodic table, they actually had like it was like each bit of the periodic table was like a little sustainable action that Puma are doing, and one of the things on
yeah.
the table was like questionable, and
Okay.
got properly like got done for it. Like I think they got
Wow.
fined for every time that had been printed, and it got printed on these clever little bags that get printed in the like hundreds and hundreds of thousands. Uh,
Oh my goodness.
and then there was a fine for like every time it had appeared. So in the end they actually, I think, I mean, I don't know what they're doing now because this was quite a while ago, but in the end they sort of wound down that side of their business because they were finding
Gosh.
it so hard to kind of back up the things they were trying to do, and they were trying to do good. So it's like you have to be careful,
Yeah.
be really careful. You have to keep going down and down and down the supply chain like really far to make sure you're squeaky clean,
S-
which is what turned a lot of
Yeah.
big companies off.
Yeah. That's actually really, really interesting to hear that sort of those challenges. And it's something we've talked about on the podcast quite a lot, actually, about, as a term that I'd heard of greenwashing before, but I hadn't heard of this other term on the flip side called green hushing, which is sort of when brands are so afraid to say the wrong thing that they don't say anything at all. And I think, hearing what Puma were doing there with like the right intentions and the right motivation, it's it's a real shame when that like you sort of throw the baby out with the bathwater in a way of like all of this good work, but to get one thing wrong. Whereas it feels like that. I guess it's on both sides, but like a more supportive and constructive world where people doing the right thing, there's criticism often warranted, but like in a constructive way rather than everything you're doing is awful. And I guess a lot of that nuance isn't there's not a lot of room for nuance in today's world of social media and
Yeah,
quick takes. But it's yeah, it's a difficult path to tread, isn't it? It's especially at a scale of what Puma's doing. I'm sure it's a real challenge.
yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, this was a while ago, so I can't speak for them now. But I found it really
Mm.
eye opening that like yeah that in the end it was sort of a better business decision for them to wind it down than keep going. Although I think now, like this, well, this was going back a bit. I think now things have changed a bit as because everyone's now finding sustainable alternatives, and it's I think that it has changed, but still, like
Yeah,
either way, you still have to be um, squeaky clean when you start claiming anything.
yeah,
Not that anyone was going
yeah.
to like pick me up for the plastic free awards for having a clip, that wasn't going to happen. But it's still the intention. Like you said, you gotta if you're going to claim something, you gotta see it through and
Yeah,
do it.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah,
I agree, and I think it's also an interesting one of like for any business, the priorities one has speak volumes. And it's like you can care about the planet, you can care about not using plastics, but if that is on a priority list, but it's like the 10th out of 10 priorities, then other things take precedence. If cost beats it, or color of the lanyard, or the style of something. So I guess the benefit there with the Plastic Free Awards is, with something like the name being Plastic Free Awards, your priorities are really, really clear, which helps make those decisions. I guess there's not really, I guess so many of these things, it's like, it comes down to basic stuff like the words you choose and the name you call your company and the name you give your events ceremony, and making sure people are aligned with that. It's so much of it's about basic human behavior things that if you get those right, the impact can stem from that, which I find fascinating. It's
I mean,
amazing the ripple effect of what can happen.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, you've obviously been on that journey with EcoSend. I mean, to discover all of the kind of environmental kind of issues with email marketing, and then have to work out how to change those and make those positive, and then to like actually make sure you're doing that. Do you know what I mean? And like quantify and document all of that. I mean, that must have been quite a journey.
Thank you for bringing that up. Actually, it's certainly an interesting one. It's definitely one that I think about in terms of priorities. Again, it's like, we could have built an email product that like cares about climate, but it's like that's one of the kind of selling points of it. Whereas by calling ourselves EcoSend, it's like that is one of our, like, basically that's our priority. So like it forces us to think about things in a different way. It forces us to make different product decisions and design decisions. And I think what I really like actually as maybe you find this as well as a designer, like when you have constraints, they actually breed a lot of creativity, where it's like, oh, well, we need to make sure we're building things that don't use huge imagery, or don't we need to make sure file sizes are as small as possible. And it's like, I think out of that comes like creative solutions to things, and like things that maybe you wouldn't try if you could just do anything you want, which I actually find incredibly rewarding in the design processes.
Yeah, me too. I hate an open brief. Worst thing in the world. I had a friend once. He's still my friend. I have a friend who was just like, "Oh, can you do some artwork for our wall?" I was like, "Absolutely not." I was like, "Speak to an illustrator or an artist." I was like, because I do loads of visual stuff, but it's sort of to a brief. It's answering solving a problem. It's sort of, I was like, is there a problem with your wall? It's like, let's drill down to the bottom of this project. Like, what's do you not like the walls? I think that's what separates a sort of an artist from a sort of more of a designer. Maybe is that brief. It's that need to solve a problem, rather than just doing something on your own sort of like pure emotion and sort of artistic flair. Like, I don't think I have that.
That's I'm terrified I'm gonna do the wrong art.
Exactly. Like, and only I can decide. Right? Like I can measure something against a brief. I can't measure something against my own emotion.
That's fascinating. Actually, I hadn't really thought about that. The distinction of designer versus artist, and I want to go. I feel like I want to go down more of these avenues, but I'm so conscious of time, Will, because I feel like already flowing past. One of the things you wanted to talk about was I guess ways of giving back, donating. Tell us more about your thoughts on this.
Well, I mean, firstly, working as a one-man studio on environmental work, and I do a sort of cut rate for sort of charities and causes I sort of believe in and want to support. I'm not going to buy the yacht. I'm not going to retire to the yacht, but I am yet. But I am. The nice thing about that is it's like, but I'm doing sort of rewarding work where I feel like I'm actually helping, for one thing, and
Mm.
secondly, because of that, I don't have, like, especially with two kids and childcare, I don't have loads of money to give to just to give away to
Sure.
causes. However, the ones that I am working with and do like, I'm more than happy to sort of cut my rate, um, which probably makes me a bit more affordable for them. Um,
Mm.
and also, like, me giving a donation of money will help to a degree, but I've got,
Mm.
well, 16 plus years of brand and communication experience from big agencies that a charity definitely wouldn't be able to afford unless the agency was doing pro bono work, um, that I can
Mm.
offer, and so I've sort of come to realize that I can actually give a lot more by just sort of lowering
Yeah.
my rate and lowering my rate, and sort of giving
Yeah.
my sort of knowledge and experience than I ever would just
Yeah.
bunging them a sort of monthly donation. So I've always done that, actually, from the beginning, really. Um,
Mm.
but and then recently I've just sort of, just this year, actually, just joined up for 1% for the Planet, which is a Patagonia, well,
Right.
it's sort of a joint initiative that, is it Yvonne Charon? You can I say his name? Yvonne Charon, from, anyway, the CEO of Patagonia, set up.
Sure.
The way, and he's got a similar view. He was like, if you can't be on the front line, you know, with all of these sort of protesters, like, trying to, like,
Yeah.
make change, if you can't give with yourself, then you've got to give. We've got to dig into our pockets and give what we can.
Yeah.
For me, I'm like, yeah, okay,
Yeah.
I can give by sort of lowering my rate and giving my experience. And I think sometimes it's interesting to think, what are you good at? What can you really give with your skills? Because sometimes it is
Yeah.
a monetary donation, but other times it could be so many other things that actually just your time and your knowledge and your energy is worth so much more than actually, what excess kind of money you have at the end of the month to bank towards a cause.
I love that, Will. I couldn't agree more as well. I think, yeah, when you think about the impact you can have, I I don't know, maybe some people they'll think this is highly over the top, but I believe, like, the skills of design, the skills of branding, the skills of communication. I mean, you giving an hour of your time with those kinds of that skill set, the impact that can have for a charity or a good cause can be huge. If that drives consumer behavior that leads to more donations, leads to more people taking action, like, I think that's just incredibly inspiring. It's something I certainly think about a lot with what we're doing, and you know small changes we make in software that can be multiplied out by millions of people that see it. It's things like that where, yeah, it's like giving, yeah, giving money is obviously critical as well, but I think when you can bring skills and energy and inspiration and time, like, I mean, God, that can go a heck of a long way. And I guess there's so many charities and causes that are crying out for that. Like, you see so many charities, I guess when you think about charities, there's like some of the big, well-known charities, but then you think about the long tail of small independent charities that need all the help they can get with their communication and their design, their branding, their messaging, and the help you can give there, I'm sure, is hugely valuable and hugely appreciated.
Yeah. And it comes back to you as well, then also, like, with the way the world's sort of, well, the scientists think the world's going, and the sort of data, when my kids are like, what did you do? I'll be like, well, in my own way,
Mm,
I did as much as I could. I know I wasn't on the front line, but I
mm,
did do, this campaign and this campaign. And I helped these guys, and I did the stuff with these guys. And it's
yeah,
like, at least I feel like I'm sort of, at least in my own way, giving back and, helping try and,
yeah,
drive change, which is, um, it's important, and it's worth it.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I know we're rapidly running out of time, Will, but I want to make sure we cover well, just a couple more topics. You wanted to talk about making designs that last. I'm keen to hear about that, and then then we'll see if we got any time for a little bit more.
Okay. Well, I mean, this is just a quick one, really. I was just thinking, going on to like probably linking the last the two previous topics together, actually, sort of. Things like the talking about plastic-free awards and talking about ways to give. One thing I found working with the charities I've done is if you can kind of create something that and you think, it's like, even if it's just like a one-day event that's going to happen one year and you're doing a campaign for it, but there's a chance that it might happen every year. If you can think bigger, think further, and design assets that could last year on year or be tweaked, but it means that you can kind of reuse them. And even like with all the digital files, you don't have to recreate everything, which takes time and costs money. And burns power and energy and all that sort of stuff. Like if you can think in that way, then generally it's a much better use of time, money, and energy for yourself and for charities. So, for instance, the plastic, we tweaked it each year, but generally we were able to push it and add more things to it. But it got cheaper for the charity each year because we were able to reuse stuff, and that ran for 3 years. I think the Million Mile Clean, which it's just gone into its 4th year, and that's all out and about now. That hasn't really been tweaked too much since we did it 4 years ago. We've updated dates and we've sort of added bits to it and kind of created different things. But so the upfront cost for the charity, even on the cut rate, is quite big. But then, if you think of that in 1 year's budget, that's quite a lot of money. If you think of it across 4 years, it comes down. So there was just like a little thought really when I was just thinking about it, and it's something I do sort of say sometimes to the people I work with. I mean, obviously you want brands to last, and when you do brands you need to think like that, but especially campaigns that can be quite flash in the pan, sometimes it's good to narrow down, how long will this be used for? Will it financially be viable to reuse it year on year? Has it got the kind of legs to do that? And it's just a kind of good use of time, money, and energy.
That's such a good point. I guess it's kind of like the equivalent of buying a good quality sweater versus a fast fashion cheapest thing you find on the online when you're buying clothing. It's like buy something to last or design something to last. And I
think so.
I like that, Will. I like that a lot. And before we wrap up, I believe you may have some wise words of advice, Will, or you may have received some advice. I'd love to hear anything you have. Not that you haven't already given a lot of very good words of wisdom. What have you got for us?
Well, something actually. I'm almost passing on wise words from someone else actually, but going back to.
Well, you're welcome to do that. That's great.
I had a good chat with Hugo not long ago, he's left Steps Against Sewage and is the CEO of Oceana, and he was sort of saying when you're driving change and you want to make change, you sort of need everyone from every bit of life, and you need a bunch of different tactics all working together. So for instance, for me, it's very much like from a kind of design and communications perspective, but like it or not, you need the people on the front line that are causing a bit of a problem. Like I don't want to get into all of your Extinction Rebellions and your Just Stop Oil, but that's just one tool of creating change, but you need to back it up with science. You need data. You need people in Parliament talking about it and lobbying for it. You need communities around the country that are sort of behind your cause. They've got your back. They're writing to MPs. They're signing petitions. You need someone who's kind of got in with the local schools that are kind of making those issues sort of explaining them in a way that's right for the school children and the next generation. And gradually, with all of those things working together, that's how you do it. And I think we get really hung up and like, well, that's a terrible thing that group are doing, or like, well, this that's the wrong sort of data, or that's this or that. And actually, you sort of, it doesn't really matter. All of it needs to work together to make change. Like the sewage, we've done loads of work with Steps Against Sewage on the End Sewage Pollution campaign, and that has like the sewage scandal is now like, you can't turn on the news or get a newspaper without that being in there, and that was a big big push of that has come from this sort of connected approach, largely spearheaded by Surfers Against Sewage over the last like 5-6 years. But
Right.
actually, no, not 5-6 years. Since they've started, that's been their goal thing. But it's really
Yeah.
taken off, especially when they built an app and they changed legislation to get sewage companies to say when they were discharging sewage. They then took that data
Right.
and worked with user experience and app builders, and then that app then gets put on BBC News all the time when there's like heavy rain, and they can see where all the sewage is. And it just all that then provided the data, and they could go to politicians with to say, look, here is physical data of all this stuff.
My goodness.
And the people who did that were obviously then dressed up in poo outfits, waving flags, and they're all up front of Parliament, and that got in the Guardian. And you need the lot. And I just think that you've got to work out what's your bit, like what's your skill to help drive that. Like for me, it's actually listening to all of these people and finding like an engaging way to sort of put those stories and messages out there. That's my bit.
Yeah.
And other people, there's lots of different ways that the kind of people kind of like can tap into the causes that they want to support and help. And it doesn't, I guess what I'm saying is, you don't have to be that person on the front line. You can find out what you're good at, see how it helps, and then do your thing well. Just do it for the right people.
Yeah. My goodness, that is what a point to finish on. I mean, yeah, it's sort of like that scandal in the UK feels like it's come, something that's been overnight, like become a big thing. But I didn't realize like quite how much had gone into that, and it really makes you appreciate a lot of hard work over a heck of a long time, and a lot of people all running around. That's such a good point. Like, yeah, it takes all of us doing our bit to make an impact. Will, I think that's such a wonderful note to be sending ourselves away on. Thank you very much, Will. And Will, just before we leave, what are you working on right now? It'd be great to hear what you're up to.
So recently we've just done a big project for they're a global charity, but for the UK arm of them, Oceana. They've created this alliance of big sort of NGOs and charities like Patagonia, Greenpeace, Blue Marine Foundation, Surfers Against Sewage, and it's called the Alliance Against Offshore Drilling. And I think there's over 50 or 60 organisations that have joined it, and over 250 individuals. And all with the common goal to end drilling for oil and gas in UK waters. One of Oceana's bigger goals is to just end drilling for oil and gas, in the ocean indefinitely globally. But not just ending it, but with like a just transition to renewable alternatives. So it's they want to make sure that there's a kind of a way to do this rather than just drawing a line. So we've just done the branding and the website and the sort of campaign for the Alliance, which has been a lovely job to be involved with. And we've actually, as Will worked, joined up to the Alliance as well. And we all met up in St Agnes on the north coast about a month back now to sort of discuss tactics moving forward and ways we can sort of get the drilling licenses sort of like off the political agenda and force the politicians to, or at least hold them to account and try and get them to, not grant new licenses and work out what their policy is in regards to this. Because, the oil rigs, they're even though you don't, you hear of the big spills, they're constantly spilling oil.
Right.
The ships that go out to find the oil fields do this thing called seismic blasting, which is blasting like louder than jet engines. Is it louder than jet? No, louder than atomic bombs. It's something crazy. It's like super loud noise, pretty much through the sea.
Yeah.
To try and find these oil fields, which is like, it can actually kill some smaller marine life, kind of like planktons and things like that. But it can damage the hearing of animals that need hearing to find their food. And
oh wow,
whales and dolphins, and it completely disrupts the kind of ocean life. So there's just, and then you've obviously got the pipelines, and some of those are like go literally through marine protected areas, and there's been licenses given to to develop oil fields that would do that, which sort of defeats the object of a marine protected area. So anyway, that's the new big thing. It's almost like, for me, it's like the new sort of sewage scandal. It's like, right, we need to work out how to make this topic sort of accessible and engaging for the public, and help sort of give people the tools to write to politicians, to explain to their kind of colleagues in schools, and to generally just get this out there, amongst the general public, to try and make some change. So yeah, that's what we're on at the moment, and it's a biggie.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that. I didn't honestly know about that at all, and I guess a lot of people don't know about this. What happens under the sea stays under the sea, and people have no idea what's going on outside of their direct view. That sounds. I'm sure there's a lot of people listening that would like to hear more about this, myself included. Where can people go to find out more? Because that sounds like, I'm sure a lot of people want to get behind you and learn more about this, and hopefully drive more awareness of this. I hugely appreciate you doing what you're doing here.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can pop a link in the description, I guess, but it's stopoffshoredrilling.org.uk, and that will take you to the Alliance sort of website, where you can learn more and sign up if you want. Also, Oceana's website has lots of information about that on it as well. But it's interesting, because I think drilling is going to be quite a hot topic on that, as well as sewage, actually. With the general elections looming, yes, around the corner, I think we're going to hear a lot more about this stuff. So check it out anyway.
Depending on when this goes live, maybe we have we've had an election and everything's magically better, but I don't know if that'll be the case. So thank you, Will. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for raising awareness of it too. Honestly, it's wonderful to hear people like yourself are doing something about this and trying to raise awareness of it. It's great to hear. So I want to make sure people can go find you if they want. You have a wonderful website, willworks.co.uk, and I guess people can find you on Instagram. We'll put that in the show notes, and go check out Will's work. It's wonderful. Will's done many, many good pieces for us as well over the years. Will, what a pleasure it's been talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Cool. Thanks, James.
Thanks. And thank you, everybody, for listening and watching. So if you've enjoyed today's show, please do tell your friends, colleagues, whoever you want about it. Shout it out in the street. And please do let us know what you thought. And we will catch you next time.